I'm Dr. Laura Gifford. The results that we have gotten in this place clinically have been astounding. We need to eat food that's real. Ditch the sugars and the grain. Fat doesn't make you fat. Fat does not cause heart disease. You literally are what you eat. Let's talk about insulin and where it comes from and what happens in the body.
I'm Dr. Jillian Murphy. This is definitely not what I was taught in school.
This is what I thought that food should be able to do for people. There's that old adage, you are what you eat, but you really actually are what you digest. The ultimate health combination is vegetables plus protein plus healthy fat. Cholesterol gets such a bad rap. All of our sex hormones come from cholesterol.
Healthy poop versus not so healthy poop. Any questions about that?
I'm Michelle McAlpin. 80% of our body composition is based on what we eat. Move frequently at a slow pace. Lift heavy things. Resistance training. It's not too late. You can put muscle mass on at any age. You really don't need weights or machines. Posture is really, really important.
If it comes from a factory and has an ingredients list, it's not whole food. It's not the way nature intended it. And you'd be amazed. We are abundant the amount of food we actually have that comes from the earth or roams the earth. That's really what we're designed to eat.
Today's what everybody needs, and we used to do this like we were always playing around with the order that we do this stuff, and so we decided this used to be a lecture and it included digestion as well, but we realized digestion really needed its whole a subject on its own. So there's a few things I'm going to skip over in here because we've covered them already, but we moved this to the end because this is really just about a few supplements that almost everyone can benefit from having in their diet or in their lifestyle plan, I guess. If not every single day, then at the very least a few times through the year. Stuff that you can look at doing to sort of take your health from, kind of like Laura was saying, like tweaking it from good to like really fantastic. So what we're going to cover, basically we're just going to be covering the supplements that support hormonal balance, fat loss, and overall health. And in particular, we're just going to be covering 3 supplements. Digestion, we've gone over this, but just a reminder that one of the things that I don't talk about in this lecture, but I really talked about a lot in the digestion lecture, was digestive enzymes. And so really making sure that if there's still something going on with digestion or things aren't feeling optimal, that you really do that digestive enzyme test and consider taking digestive enzymes, because it's really like the difference between feeling good and great in terms of overall digestion.
And just quickly, bowel movements would be off, right? And your tummy pain. Like, what are some of the indicators? I know that you've said.
Right. So it can be a variety of things. Typically, when we talk about digestive issues, it's like what came first, the chicken or the egg? It's like, is it the food that you were eating that caused digestive issues, or did you start with a digestive issue that caused you to be sensitive to foods? It's probably a little bit of both, but digestive enzymes seem to be really at the core of it, so low digestive enzyme. And it just leads to this whole cascade of not breaking food, particularly protein, down, and then it getting to the digestive system and causing a lot of issues. Even more so than if you had normal digestive enzymes. So in terms of symptoms, it can be a wide range of things. So it can be stomach pain. Stomach pain is a big one, and symptoms of heartburn. So symptoms that we normally associate with excess acid are actually often a low acid problem. Constipation or IBS, bloating, gas, cramping, any of those sort of digestive enzymes, any of those sort of digestive symptoms, but then also things like eczema, things that are sort of, you start doing for people who do the digestive work and they just can't seem to get there. They've done the food work, they've done the digestive repair work, and they're just not getting results. Often it's digestive enzymes. That's like that last key sort of piece of the puzzle. And they can be really anti-inflammatory as well, because a lot of them are papain, they're coming from papaya, and so they can be really anti-inflammatory too. Okay, water we talked about too, and really what we talked about when we did the digestive lecture is really just, if you're well hydrated, your urine will be pale, sort of like straw colored or almost clear. And that on this diet we don't have to be so concerned with how much water we drink, because we get a lot of water from the foods that we eat. That being said, I don't think it hurts, especially at this time of year, to be drinking water all through the day, except for right before you eat, right? We talked about that. So not diluting those digestive enzymes anymore. Okay, so let's get into the heart of this. And like I said, there's 3 main supplements that I want to talk about. And the first one is probiotics. And I talked about it a little bit, obviously, in the digestive lecture as part of the really important sort of repair work or re-inoculating work of digestive repair. But does anybody remember what probiotics are? Good bacteria, yeah, good bacteria. So, we're constantly consuming foods that might have bacteria on them. We're constantly touching things, and so at any given time, there's potentially different funguses and bacteria and viruses that are moving through our digestive tract. The good bacteria are there for a number of reasons. It says where are they? They're all through our. We have. When we talk about probiotics and we talk about bacteria, we have it on our skin, we have it all through our digestive tract. When we're talking about probiotics, where we're really aiming to get the probiotics is small intestine, large intestine. So when we're talking about supplementing with them, that's where we're attempting to get probiotics. Where do they come from naturally? So obviously if we have bacteria in our digestive system, there's a way for us to get it naturally without supplementing. Our first sort of exposure to getting probiotics in our digestive tract is actually through birth. So, vaginal delivery is how we get our first sort of like exposure to probiotics or to good bacteria for our digestive system. And there's lots of really interesting studies being done now that are showing that they're sort of correlating strains that are found in babies when they're first born or lack of certain strains to certain diseases, which is really interesting. So if you have these strains, then you're probably not going to get these diseases. If you have these, you're probably not going to get these. So that's where we first get exposed. And then again, through the years, we get exposed basically through food and environment to bacteria, and we ingest them. We can also get them from cultured foods, so foods that are really good for our digestive system, things like yogurt. There's lots of really good, healthy bacteria. Other fermented foods like kimchi, which is a Korean food, I believe. Kefir, which is a fermented dairy product. And fermented vegetables, like in the paleo community, fermented vegetables is a really big deal. Sauerkraut, people will ferment carrots. I mean, I don't really ferment food, I'm not big on it.
I don't like it.
I don't like it either, yeah.
I wish I liked
I mean, I'm the same, yeah.
I tried sauerkraut, I just don't like it.
Yeah. But for some people, they love it.
Are pickles considered fermented?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I would never have thought of that because I feel like pickles have a lot of sugar. But for some reason, I never watched Dr. Oz, but I was watching it the other day, and he had like 10
Was that when
foods to help you? No, it was like 10 foods to help you lose weight or whatever, and one of them was like eating fermented foods, and so they were using pickles as an example. So there's a way to sort of eat your probiotics, and so generally that's a pretty good way to keep your healthy bacterial balance up. But for most people, by the time they come to see me, especially if there's a health issue, I recommend supplementing with at least 1 round of probiotics. So if there's a really frank digestive issue, then we supplement with probiotics until it's better. If there's not, I still usually recommend like a capsule of probiotic a day for 1 to 2 months. And that just helps to make sure that we really have like a good amount of healthy bacteria in the bowel, and that's going to do a number of things. So it's going to help make sure that unhealthy bacteria and fungus and viruses can't take over in the digestive system. It helps to break down food products, so especially food that hasn't been digested very well. It helps us to further digest things in the large intestine. It's a really, really, really important part of the immune system. So kind of like I was saying, like they're doing all these studies that are showing, kids, even from the day they're born, the probiotics they have in their digestive system can influence them down the line. So really important part of our immune system. And that's for people who don't have digestive issues and are just interested in doing probiotics like for a month or 2 every year. I usually recommend the fall because it does help with the immune system. And so what a great time of year to do probiotics for 2 months, October, November, when the flu really starts to hit. It's a great time of year to sort of introduce some really healthy bacteria. And then the other thing is it helps with the production of vitamin K. So we actually produce vitamin K in our bowel, which is a vitamin that helps us with coagulation, so helping our blood to clot. And that's one of the reasons that babies get vitamin K shots when they're born, is because they actually are born sterile. They don't have the bacteria there. They're just getting exposed to it when they're born. So they actually aren't capable of producing vitamin K. So there is the potential for a bleeding issue with babies, which is why they get a vitamin K shot. But probiotics help us with that as well. So they help us with blood clotting. Anything, I think those are the big ones with probiotics. They're also sort of indirectly, I mean, because of what we've seen, like what we've seen even within this group with pain and inflammation reducing when we're eating right and our digestive system gets on track, I always consider probiotics a really indirectly important part of an anti-inflammatory protocol. So for people who have chronic inflammation, being on the probiotic, because of the effects on the digestive system, really do help to reduce inflammation overall in the body. So immune and inflammation are the two key things. And then there's also, vitamin K production, and they can also help to digest food a little bit in the bowel. Okay? And then I recommend some brands. Mostly I just carry Metagenics here, a dairy-free and a slightly stronger. Another one that I've been using every so often with people who have really major digestive issues is a product called VSL3, and it's almost pharmaceutical grade. It's sort of like triple basically the strongest probiotic I have here, and it's really expensive, but for people who have things like chronic IBS, it's amazing. Ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, they're just like amazing for helping to clear things up. Like they really, like sometimes people ask, well, why can't I just eat yogurt? And if we were going to compare, yogurt would have maybe 15 million units of probiotic in it. The probiotic supplements I use have like 60 billion in them. And the VSL3 has 250 billion. So you can see how from 15 million in a little cup of yogurt, which may or may not be there because it's been on a truck and it may have sat somewhere and who knows how long it's been on the shelf at the grocery store, to 250 billion, which they'll guarantee if it accidentally got left out for 3 months, it would still be there, because it's live, right? So it dies when it's not refrigerated. So, you can just eat yogurt, you can just eat fermented foods on an ongoing basis to keep your probiotic levels up, but in instances where there has been, like if you've had the flu, or you had to take a round of antibiotics, or things just aren't feeling very good, if you just haven't eaten really well for a week or two, it's not a bad idea to supplement with a little bit of probiotic, okay? So that's it. And again, almost like side effects, sometimes people will ask about side effects. Very little. Sometimes when people introduce a probiotic, there might be a little bit of gas or something at the beginning, but in terms of like safety, incredibly safe. Like kids can take it, adults can take it, older people can take it, safe with medications. Like there's just no real health issues with taking a probiotic.
Hey, when people are on antibiotics, do they take it at the same time, or what's the latest thing? Like, or they wait till they're done their antibiotics and then take it?
No, I usually recommend taking it at the same time, but not at the same time of day. Oh, okay. So just because the antibiotic will, like if you just put them in your stomach at the same time, like the antibiotic will kill it. But like if you take your antibiotic in the morning, then take your probiotic at night before you go to bed. Yeah, because it will help. Like it will help to prevent, especially for women, like yeast infections and issues that they'll have after taking antibiotics. And overall, it just helps to combat digestive upset.
And when do kids switch over to the adult kind? Like when you have that neonate.
You know what? I think the thing with probiotics is, again, I like using the Natogen because it has a specific strain for newborns, but I think that my opinion is they could take the adult stuff at any time. They just don't need a full capsule. They could take a quarter of a capsule or, dipping a finger into the powder or whatever. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that we all have a wide variety of strains, and so, no two human beings have exactly the same probiotic strain, so it's great to, or it's okay to have a baby. They might have been exposed to those strains from their mom anyway, right? Okay. So that's fine. And it also speaks to the fact that it doesn't hurt to vary the probiotic you're taking from time to time to get slightly different strains of probiotic. In medicine, they're really, again, in that very medical point of view, they're very, very intent on this strain targets this does this. And it's like, again, just not like, except for, a few bowel issues, it's just not really true. Like we need a wide variety of the strains to get a really wide effect in the body. Omega-3s. So what are omega-3s? We haven't really talked about this at all. What's that? Oils, yeah, they're fat. Yeah, omega-3s, they're fat. And they're considered an essential fatty acid. So we basically have 3 fatty acids that are considered essential because we don't make them, although there's some people say we do make some 9. So omega-3s, omega-6s, and omega-9s are the ones that are considered essential. So we have to eat them. We can't make them. Where do we get them? So does anybody know where we get omega-3s in particular? Yeah, so eggs, but they're not natural. Well, I shouldn't say they're not naturally found in eggs. They are naturally found in eggs. They're found in eggs where the chickens were fed flax. So flax is the source of omega-3. Flaxseed, what's that?
Wild fish?
Fish, yeah, it's like cold water, like fish,
Salmon.
yeah. And bottom feeders is generally the best, which I know people are always like, ooh, bottom feeders. But bottom feeders, because the higher up the chain of fish, the higher the mercury levels. So when we're talking about getting fish oils and reducing the heavy metal exposure, you want to be, like if you're looking at your omega-3 bottle, it should be like anchovies, you know, herring, that kind of like sardines, yeah, like you're looking at getting the oil from little bottom feeders. Why do we need them? Omega-3s in particular, so we have 3s, 6s, and 9s, and the big push is on 3s, and there's a reason for it. 6s and 9s we get a ton of in our diet. So 6s and 9s are coming from vegetable oils, which we're trying to reduce in our diet here, but in the general population, omega-6s are everywhere. Like that's the predominant fat that most people are eating. And omega-9s are good, but that's like olive oil. So we tend to get enough of that as well. Omega-3s, when you think about fish and flax, most people are just not getting nearly enough of it. And in addition to not getting enough of it, the ratio of 3, 6, and 9 is really important in the body. And so obviously if you're not getting enough 3s and you're getting tons of 6s and 9s, it's that ratio that's really thrown off. And when the ratio is really thrown off, that's when we start to get inflammation in the body.
And you want the ratio to be 1 to 1?
1
or 2 to 1? Or?
There's different thoughts on it. 1 to 1 would be good, but right now in terms of like omega-3s to omega-6s, it's like 1 to 20 for most people. So if you want the ratio to be 1 to 1, most people are getting, instead of getting the same amount of omega-3s and 6s, they're getting 20 times more 6 than 3, if not 40 times more. Like, so that's why I get a lot of questions from people about, because Udo's oil is very popular, especially with vegetarians, and it's a specially formulated perfect ratio of omega-3s, 6s, and 9s. But it's crazy to take extra 6s and 9s. Because if you want to fix the ratio, you just need to add more 3. You're always going to be getting enough 6s and 9s. Because even our meat, which again used to be grass-fed, grass-finished, and would have been really high in omega-3s, tends to not be so high in omega-3 anymore. We're trying, again, in a group like this, we're trying to fix that a little bit, right? But omega-3s are hard to get. They're really hard to get. So you can get them from fish. You can get a little bit from flax, although humans aren't great converters. So the active component of omega-3s that we really want to sort of push that anti-inflammatory pathway, when we take flax, we actually have to convert like precursors into the active substances. And humans aren't very good at that. So only like 8% of humans will take the flax oil and turn it into the active constituents that we need. Chickens are really good converters, which is why eggs have become so popular. You feed the chickens flax and they convert, and then the eggs have some omega-3. So that's another source in terms of getting them in the diet. But you can see why supplementation becomes really important, because most people just cannot get omega-3. Again, if you're eating like a purely like strict, really amazing paleo diet, tons of like grass-fed, grass-finished beef, if you're eating grass-fed butter, if you're eating, all these things, you might be getting
How many cans of sardines are you eating today?
At least 1,
Yeah.
usually 2.
Cans of sardines.
Yeah.
I
And
don't
if you're, and if you're not eating any vegetable oils and you're being really, really cautious, you might be able to get close to it, but for most people it's just not that realistic. Like taking an omega-3 supplement, again, maybe not every single day for the rest of your life, but making an effort a couple of times a year to go through a bottle of them is a really, really good idea. Because when we're talking about how our body works, we have, you know, sort of anti-inflammatory pathways and we have pro-inflammatory pathways. And fat can really go kind of in any direction, but omega-3s is sort of like the one thing that really pushes that anti-inflammatory pathway. So for people who have aches and pains, who have joint issues, headaches, skin issues, all those things, fish oils are a really big component. And they've also been proven over and over and over again to be a really important component in mood issues. So like depression, anxiety, all those things.
Now, is there a certain number of units you should take?
I usually recommend like
Milligrams?
2,000 milligrams a day, like 2 grams. And that's safe. Like that's like, it's like sort of like, you know, there's some people who take 1,000, but that's sort of like the low end. Like there are people who take way, 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 way more of that. Again, in terms of safety, you know, some of the worst things that would happen would be like diarrhea from having too much oil, or they do act as a bit of a blood thinner. But only once in all the years of practice that I've had have I ever seen that happen, and it was with like a 92-year-old who was on blood thinners, and she happened to bruise like crazy when I gave her some fish oils. So otherwise, I've never seen it be, like for most people, thinning their blood a little is actually a really good thing. So why do we take them? Again, anti-inflammatory, that's the really, really major the major message. But also again, you know, when we're thinking about fat's a really important component in our cell walls. It's really important for our brain health, for mood. It's really important for sex hormones, so which help to manage all kinds of different processes in our body. And you know, more and more research is coming out showing that fat really does help us lose fat. Like when we eat fat, it helps our body actually mobilize fat as well. So fat's really important. Any questions about fish oils or anything like that? Okay, so the last thing that I really want to talk about is vitamin D. And I wrote vitamin D3. Most supplements now are vitamin D3. So if you are supplementing and you look on the bottle, it will say vitamin D3. For a while,
it was all D2.
It was all D2, and D2 is not, yeah, it's synthetic, and it's not the form of vitamin D that our body really likes. It's like the form before our body finishes convert. Again, like it's like a precursor sort of, and our body always wants what's closest to what it would make itself or what we would naturally eat. So vitamin D3 is just a more effective form of vitamin D. What is vitamin D? Vitamin D is actually not really a vitamin. Like we now know that vitamin D is actually more of a hormone. Just like all of our other sex hormones, we produce vitamin D from cholesterol. So we use the sun and we use cholesterol within our body, and the sun starts the conversion of cholesterol, which then goes through our kidneys and our liver, and it produces vitamin D, and it acts very much like a hormone within the body. So they started out, you know, it's called vitamin D. It was thought of as a vitamin, but we know that the effects of vitamin D throughout the body are widespread and very, very much hormone-like. Why do we take it? Vitamin D has been shown, again, like the effects are widespread, amazing for the immune system, anti-inflammatory, cancer protective, important in the prevention of osteoporosis. Obviously, it helps us with absorbing calcium, also important in hormonal balance overall. So for people suffering with hormonal issues, vitamin D is super important. Again, it's just one of those, like all the probiotics and the omega-3s, it's just one of those supplements that has it's like huge bang for your buck. Like when you take these supplements, you're helping your health in so many different ways. Where do we get them in terms of eating vitamin D? Not that many places. Like vitamin D, we don't really I feel like small amounts in organ meats. I feel like maybe in egg yolks a tiny bit. Brewer's yeast maybe, we just don't really eat vitamin D. We produce it from being in the sun. And again, when I was going through school, I was taught that sort of get outside 15 minutes a day, full face and hand exposure, and you get enough sun to make vitamin D. But it looks like in Canada, at sort of the latitude that we're at, that it might be only 2 months of the year where that's actually possible. So
And now they're even saying supplement through the summer, right? Is that like?
Well, it's fat. It's a storable thing as well, right? So most people are so depleted that they can just keep going. Yeah. What else? I was going to say something else about it. Oh, in terms of dosage. So again, people have been. Just this week I was asked a couple of times by patients like, how much should I be taking? Because the Canadian recommendations are really low, like brutally low, and like 400 IUs a day or something, and you really need like 2,000 again is a really good, like 2,000 milligrams of fish oil, 2,000 IUs of vitamin D is a really good sort of like, good number to keep in mind.
How
Again,
about
super
liquid,
safe.
The liquid drops.
Perfect.
that you can get?
Those are great. Like at Shoppers, the D drops.
The D
Perfect.
drops,
Yeah. So like I think the kid ones are 100
I
per
think
drop,
the
but I
adult
think the
ones are
adult ones are
1,000.
1,000.
Yeah.
So 2 drops a day.
Yeah.
And again, it's fat stored. So I've told Laura lots of times, like with the kids, I'll give them like 10 drops on Sunday and then just kind of like forget about it for the rest of the week, because we can store it and then we can use it later.
And it doesn't taste, so you could put
No.
it in your coffee in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Usually I sometimes just put it in my coffee and then just stir it.
Or water or whatever. Yeah.
What's too much? Like my son, he likes to eat the pills. Like he likes the. That's why I'm gonna get him the DHA chewables because that'd be better for him. But he just likes the, and I give him he takes about 3 a day. 3,000 a day. Like, what's too much for
I think
a
that's
little
totally fine. Like,
or...
I remember a couple of years ago, I don't know if you guys remember this, but like some guy died of vitamin D, like a vitamin D overdose. But he was taking, do you remember this?
No.
He was taking like, I want to say like 200,000. Like at first I thought it was 20,000 IUs a day, and I was like, ooh, that's not like a vitamin D overdose at 20,000 IUs. Like that's something to be a little bit worried about, And then I think I actually read it, and it was like he was taking like 200,000 IUs. Like you'd have to be like downing a full bottle of those drops almost every day. Like I feel like, in most of the literature, it's like toxicity unknown or toxicity there's not. And again, it's not like with other fat-soluble vitamins like A and E, where there's actually like a very clear toxicity picture, because those are toxic. But we're now knowing that vitamin D is not really a fat-soluble vitamin; it's a hormone, and so we just use it differently. So I think the toxicity levels are like through the roof. So I think that's probably okay.
It's weird.
Yeah. So I think it's fine. What else did I have on here? Not much. Oh, vitamin A. We added this in last time only because there's more and more research coming out now showing that we're actually vitamin A deficient. And vitamin A is a fat-soluble vitamin, but for the most part we get it in our diet in the form of beta-carotene from vegetables, from like orange vegetables, so from carrots and sweet potatoes and squashes and things like that. But again, the research is showing that we don't always necessarily convert beta-carotene into vitamin A in our body. And it's interesting because vitamin A is really good for fighting viruses, and I used it for ages in my practice with really great results. Like with people who had, when some people get a virus and they just cannot get rid of it, or they get like strep throat and they just can't get rid of it, or they get a virus and they can't get rid of it, or kids who had ongoing fevers, like every 2 weeks they're getting a fever and they can't get rid of it. And I would always use vitamin A, and at some point I stopped, and I think it was just like there's a lot of fear around some of these fat-soluble vitamins, so when the people go back to their doctor, the nurse or whatever, they would freak out about how much vitamin A I had them on. But it worked, it totally worked. And so I think at some point I just got tired of dealing with the backlash and I stopped using it. And then all this research started coming out saying how deficient people actually are in vitamin A, and I started using it again, and the results again are just so good. Like with people who have ongoing viruses or illnesses, anything that has to do with the immune system, I just like crank up the vitamin A for a couple of weeks and then drop it down to a lower maintenance dose, and the results again were just like incredible. I was like, how could I have forgotten that this stuff was
And what are
so good?
dosages?
Well, I'm a little tentative with vitamin A to just like throw out a dosage because the toxicity potential is there. I just feel like if you have a vitamin A issue, just let me know.
Yeah, no, that's totally good.
No, but I have to be careful, right?
doses.
Like I don't want to be like, you could take this, no problem. Like with all the other things, like they really are things that most people need. They really are super safe. We can take tons of them or a little of them, and almost every single person is going to benefit, and the safety profile is really, really low. With vitamin A, the risk is a little bit higher, so I feel like I just can't say like, oh, anyone.
Eat
But
some
I-
carrots.
Yeah.
Well, it's also an organ meat
Organ
too,
meat,
right?
yeah, but people don't need organ meat, right? Like, so when it's like with iron, right? It's like everyone's like, well, you can just get iron from leafy green vegetables and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, sure, but it's non-heme iron, and we need heme iron to help build our blood. And so there's conversion that has to happen. And anytime there's like a conversion that has to happen in our body, we just don't necessarily absorb it as well, we just don't necessarily use it as well. So it's like taking vitamin D in the wrong form, or eating iron in the wrong form, or eating, I shouldn't say wrong, but not in our most absorbable form, or eating vitamin or beta carotene, right? Like you have to convert. So as omnivores, we absorb these things best from animal products. We absorb iron best from animal products. We absorb vitamin A best from animal products. The problem is not that many people eat organ meats anymore. So I think that's why we added that in. And then the last thing is whey protein isolate. And again, this is really more of a, what is it? It's a protein that comes from dairy. So whey is a protein. The protein that most people react to in dairy is casein. So even some people that have issues with dairy will tolerate whey quite well. It's highly, highly absorbable, like a highly bioavailable form of protein. And I just mention it because it's a really good source of supplemental protein for people who are having difficulty. And it can be particularly helpful for people who are stuck with trying to lose weight. So whey protein, again, just research has shown that can be really helpful at changing body composition. So for people who are struggling to lose weight, adding in another 15 or 30 grams of whey protein isolate can really, really help to change body composition.
That's probably that, because they put it in the morning in a shake, and then you're getting that protein in the morning.
Right,
I think you're
right.
getting that extra.
Mm-hmm. And it's great for that purpose, which is another reason we added in. So for people who are struggling with snacks or breakfast or whatever it is, we don't recommend making protein or protein powder your main source of protein by any means, but it's a good supplement. So it's a good supplement to have on hand.
But it's not a meal replacement.
It could be in a pinch, but it's not ideal, right? It's processed.
Yeah, it's still a powder. Like I had some. I was in a rush this morning, and I couldn't wait for Pete to cook me breakfast, so I had protein in a smoothie. And it sustained me. I was fine. Like I wasn't hungry until noonish, 12ish or something. But that was the first time in a month probably that I've done that. It's a factory, right? That whole factory game. It's a factory produced product. But again, as Jill's saying, it's a good supplement to have on hand. The kids too. The kids like it.
And it can be really helpful for when we were talking the other week about people who struggle to get enough food because they just don't really feel hungry, like they're struggling to get the protein in that they need. Protein powder can be really helpful in those circumstances to help them get the protein they need without feeling like they need to be eating steaks,
It's a really good right in the beginning, I think. It's a really
I think so too, yeah.
it's really
And
good.
post-workout or pre-workout for people who struggle to go work out at 6:30 in the morning without having anything to eat, and they don't feel like eating eggs at 5 o'clock or whatever, the protein shake can be really helpful.
And traveling.
Yeah. Within the paleo world, it's sort of believed that when your system's working really, really well, you should be able to get up and exercise. But then there's a lot of bodybuilders in particular are hardcore, you have to eat something before you go work out. And I don't exactly, I should know, but I just don't remember what that theory is. I don't know if it's because it takes a good hour for the food to be available.
Michelle talked about when you eat before you work out that you tend to burn what you just eat rather than your fat stores. Right? So
Especially if it's carbohydrates.
Yeah, carbs before your workout.
Protein, on the other hand, is not a bad thing because it takes about a good hour from if you're drinking the shake or whatever, it's going to take a good hour before it's sort of ready for you to use it. And so at that point your workout's over, and it can help to build your muscles while you're using fat stores, right? So this would be a little bit different than having carbohydrate, but again, you can maybe speak to this more than I can, but I feel everything I've read from Rob Wolf and Mark Sisson is once you get really fat adapted, you should be able to exercise. Like you should, like when you think back to like hunter-gatherers, they wouldn't have necessarily like...
No, the reason they're exercising is to eat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Human
they didn't
body.
get up and make breakfast and then go
They
hunting.
didn't. They had to hunt first. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've always understood that it's important to get the protein in you after your workout to repair your muscles, right?
But again, you'll get a different, like, whatever personal trainer you happen to have.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a
you're gonna
really,
get a
really,
different-
and even in the paleo sphere, it's a big controversial sort of thing. Everyone's into. There was a while there, a lot of the people were, because these guys were CrossFit people, and they were really working out hard. They were eating baby food afterwards, like the sweet potatoes and all the things like that, like just because it was done.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But sweet potatoes, you know, they were talking about like carb loading after you've eaten and stuff like that. And
I think it's mostly an issue. I feel like your body tells you a little bit too. Like there's some people who feel really sick and nauseous if they try to work out without eating, and so for them, this is like a pretty good
It
option.
kind of works both ways.
Like,
Some people
yeah,
feel sick if
it's-
they eat.
yeah, it's
and
yeah,
then
individual
some people
tweaking.
feel sick if they
Yeah,
eat.
yeah. So I feel
That's
like,
a good option because it's not as heavy on your stomach if you sat down and ate bacon and eggs and then tried to go for a workout.
and then there's my friend Christina, I don't know if any of you worked out there, who drinks coffee while we work out, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna barf. But like I'm also a little jealous because it smells so good. I love her.
imagine.
She's amazing. So other things to consider. So again, this group has done really well. So occasionally we have people who are still struggling with certain things when we get to the end. And so we recommend certain things like advanced laboratory testing. Like so for people who have like really taken on the diet, they've gotten on board, they've really explored digestive health and really, you know, often if they're having issues, they'll have seen me or talked to me throughout the process. And we've really tried to get them on track and they just can't. You know, sometimes I recommend advanced laboratory testing. So stool testing to figure out what's actually going on in their bowel. If they absolutely cannot lose weight after months and months and months of doing this, I'll recommend hormonal testing to see what's going on with hormones. Dietary adjustments specific to you. So, you know, like Laura was saying, for the most part, we all sort of need the same food, but there's small, small differences in we, you know, there's bio-individuality a little bit in between each of us. So for some people we have to make like, some people need more carbs, some people need fewer carbs, some people need, you know, more fat, some people need less fat. So that's something that can help. And then also like, you know, I've given you sort of bare bones supplementation information, but there's like a whole range of things we can do to sort of adjust what's happening in the body. Depending, but again, it seems like everybody's doing really great, so I think it's not so much of an issue. Yeah. Any questions about that stuff? Since I don't know what I did.
Is there any more?
I think
slides?
that's it. No, I think that's it.
That's
That's it.
I
Yeah.
mean, the computer might be shutting down. Might turn
Yeah,
off power.
the
The
power.
power's
I won't
going
slam it shut today.
off.
Yeah, so I mean, the big take home from today is that vitamin D and probiotics and fish oils in particular are three things that almost everyone will benefit from a few times a year. And again, for people who aren't great at taking supplements, my recommendation is usually to do like a round of almost all of them in the fall, because all of them will help with immune, right? They strengthen your immune system, they strengthen your overall health. So in that flu season, what better time to sort of building up to the holiday season, like what better time to do these things, you know, like clean up your diet in the fall, commit to taking the supplements for 2 or 3 months, and then Christmas hits, you know?
All hell
And
raisins.
bread. Everything's crazy.
And if you think about those 3 supplements, and if you think about sort of Paleolithic man kind of thing, obviously they wouldn't have needed that. They're outside all day. They're eating a ton of bugs, right? Obviously their probiotics are all there. There's no antibiotics. They don't have any, you know, antibiotic soap and stuff like that. So they're not killing off their good bacteria on a regular basis. They've got tons of that.
Chronic stress
But also too, their food that they were eating, their beef and their fish, was full of omega-3s, right? So in the modern day world that we live in, unfortunately, those are 3 of the major things that we just don't have access to. There's some real paleo people who are like, no, we shouldn't be supplementing with anything. We should be able to get it all. But it's, as Jill was saying, it's really hard to
And that's
get it
my
all.
view overall on nutrition. Like, I don't stock a multivite because I don't really believe in them. Because I think that we should be getting
Right.
our what we need for the most part from our food. but it's just really hard to get those things. And I think that they're even like people who eat quite well are probably doing okay with that stuff. Like if you do exercise and you do get outside and you don't take antibiotics all the time, and you make an effort to eat grass-fed beef, like you're probably doing okay. It just doesn't hurt to sort of like, tweak things every now and then.
You can feel better, for sure.
And I think it's also just good to talk about supplements because there's a ton of information out there and people get confused and they end up on a lot of different supplements sometimes when they come in. And it's just, most of them just aren't really that necessary, right?
Any other questions? Any other questions before you don't have access to us anymore?
I'm wondering about like all the supplement stuff, and we talked about like the heartburn and stuff for when you're pregnant. Because the first time I was pregnant, I had a lot of heartburn.
Yeah. Well, so that's a little different though, right? Because in that circumstance, like with heartburn with pregnancy, it's like actually like a baby is pushing your
but I
stomach
just mean,
up.
will any of that like reduce it at all, or is there any of
The supplements
stuff that I
it might. I really feel like people who have a healthier digestive system tend to do better in terms of like getting heartburn when they're pregnant, but it might not take care of it all because it's a physical thing, right? It's like your stomach's getting pushed up into your chest, right?
But there's nothing like that I shouldn't do, like, or anything.
Those
like
in terms
of pregnancy,
yeah,
those are all fine, and in fact, most of those have actually been shown to have like a really improved effect on the babies that are born to women who are on those supplements. Like with pregnant women, like with vitamin D, it's like double it, because it's better for the baby. Like with probiotics, they're less likely to have eczema and allergies and asthma if you're taking probiotics. The omega-3s, it's all about brain development in those babies. So like those 3 supplements, again, I feel really confident talking about them to groups because literally anyone can take them.
It's so hard to take fish oils in the first trimester.